Welcome back. Here's a question for you. What do you get when you have a ballet dancer, a legal person, and a fiction writer? Give up? You have V S Kemanis, our guest today. My name is Vin Dacquino. Her name is Via. Via, hello and welcome. What a pleasure to have you here. You are a very prolific author. Tell me about all of these wonderful books you've written, and tell me about Via. Who is she, and how did she get where she is today?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you
And
for
I'm
inviting
very
me.
happy to have you.
I've been very fortunate to be able to do a number of things in my life. And my first love was, as you said, dance,
Yes.
ballet.
Ballet, me too. What a beautiful. You should see me in a tutu. I am absolutely
I bet you
ridiculous.
were exquisite.
Ballet.
Yes,
my
I
goodness.
was trained in ballet when I
Wow.
was from a young age, where I grew up in California. And as a teenager and young adult, I danced in various ballet companies.
Wow.
Unfortunately, an injury caused me to have to give up that dream.
Oh, that's sad.
But then that got me on the track to going to school, and I went to college at UC Berkeley.
Wow,
Got an
Berkeley.
undergraduate degree. Then went to law school in Colorado at the University of Colorado
ballet to law
Boulder.
school.
From ballet to law school. Interestingly, I meet a number of lawyers in ballet class. I still dance. And
Really?
Yes, it's interesting because
Both male and female, or no?
male and female,
Yeah.
probably mostly female,
Yeah.
but yes.
Ballet's a tough one, man. Oof.
Ballet is a very
Condition you have
it's
to
a
be
very
in.
it's a very disciplined art
Oh,
form,
yeah.
and I think lawyers are also have that kind of discipline too. So the two of them somehow seem to go together. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I got my law degree in Colorado, and then I made my way to the East Coast and started my law career at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office,
Wow.
where I was an assistant district attorney.
Wow.
And I did both trial work and appellate work. Did that for about 5 years or so, then another 5 years with another state agency, the New York State Organized Crime Task Force.
Wow. And you met a very good friend of mine, one of my youthful friends, Dan Angelillo,
Yes.
who's a judge.
Yes,
Yeah, Dan,
I worked for him.
Yeah, Dan, great guy. He
Mm-hmm.
was on this show. He did the show a while ago. But yeah, Dan's
Yes,
Great
he was
guy,
great guy and a wonderful judge.
Yep.
I worked for him in the later part of my career, which was more recent. I worked for the appellate division in Brooklyn, which is the busiest appellate court in the country.
Wow.
And for several of the years that I was there, I worked for him as his law clerk.
wow.
Drafting decisions
Yeah.
and discussing the law with him and the
I'm
cases.
always amazed at people who have this love of fiction, and they also have this incredible other interest. I had as a guest a superintendent of schools who always had a secret desire to write fiction. A little spicy too, but fiction. And he was a night writer, and by day he was a superintendent, and by night he wrote his books.
Well,
Did
this
you
is-
do any of your fiction writing while you were in your law career?
I did.
Oh, you did?
I had to fit it into the cracks. I've had
Yeah,
have had a
me
very
too.
busy
Me
life,
too.
right? A career and in the law, and so I would write on the weekends and nights.
Yeah. I taught school for 35 years, and for most of that time, I wrote on nights and weekends. And I did Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye and a number of books, but my books reflected my teaching and my coaching, just like your books reflected your knowledge of law. So, at what point did you start writing?
I've been writing for many years. Probably started writing in the 80s or so when I was at the DA's office, and the way to fit it into a really busy life was to start out with short fiction. Short stories are my first love in the
Did
fiction
you
area.
send any of those to magazines or?
I did. I had a number of them published over
Publishing,
the years in
wow.
various magazines and journals.
Great.
Most recently, my stories, the ones that are crime related, have been published in Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine.
Really?
That's
Impressive.
the longest running mystery magazine
Yes,
in
it
the country.
is.
It's a
Very
fantastic
impressive.
publication.
I used to love to read those.
Yes, and they have a wide variety of stories in there. So
Yeah.
there's always something in there for everyone, because the mystery, we use the word mystery very, very broadly.
Yeah, so you do like crime mystery.
Yeah, my novels are really legal based, because my protagonist is an assistant district attorney. Her name is Dana Hargrove. And yes, each of my novels does have a different case in it, or cases that Dana handles in the courtroom and in the investigative stage sometimes. So the first novel actually in the series, called Thursday's List, I got the idea for it from the work I did with the Organized Crime Task Force in the 90s. I was investigating and developing a big case against a Colombian narcotics cartel,
Oh boy.
forfeiting the proceeds of narcotics crimes.
Oh boy.
So in my first novel, I just took that idea and I expanded
Now,
on
which
it.
one was your first?
The first novel in the series is called Thursday's List.
Okay. Do we want to pan these now? Or do we have?
We can talk about them as we go
I'm
along.
going to get yelled at by
Okay?
the director for going out of line. Oh, here we go.
Yes, that's the first one,
There we
Thursday's
are.
List.
Thursday's List. That's your first.
Yes, in the series involving Dana Hargrove. And I'm doing something a little bit different with this series, in that I have a plan for 6 novels total. I've done 4 of them so far. And I'm taking Dana through her entire career in 6 novels. So that means
Wow.
there are huge time gaps in between each novel.
Yeah.
So the first one, she is a rookie prosecutor in 1988. Then the next novel is in 2001. Then the next one was 1994, then 2001. And the most recent one was taking place in 2009. That's Deep Zero.
Wow.
The other books that you're showing now are my short story collections. So I've written over 100 short stories, and they're collected in 4 different volumes.
Wow.
And some of them are crime related. Malocclusion is
So the
crime
first
related.
ones were part of a series.
The first books that you saw were part of the Dana Hargrove series. Those are novels.
Yep.
And then the second group of 4 books that you just saw are my short story collections, and those just are, go all over the place. They're not just crime related.
Are the first 4 over? Is that series done, or do you have another 5th book hiding somewhere?
Oh, I'm planning to do 6 total.
Oh, nice.
So yes, I've got the idea for the 5th one in the works.
So the first 4, tell me a little bit about them. The first 4 have the same protagonist,
Correct. And yeah,
the protagonist is an assistant DA.
assistant DA.
And is the antagonist the same all the way through? Does he get caught? Is it a
each
series of crimes that he's fighting, or is it the same person he's after? Like The Fugitive.
Each novel is very different with
Oh,
different
okay.
they involve different cases
the
because they
same-
take place in very different times in
Oh, okay.
Dana Hargrove's career.
So it isn't the same crime you're doing for 4. It's just
no.
the same protagonist.
Same protagonist, Dana Hargrove.
Wow.
And I have her, I'm taking her through different stages of her career and her experience, as well as different stages in her life.
Oh, wow.
Because I've always felt in my own career the biggest challenge was to juggle family
I
along
was
with
just
a very
going to ask,
high-powered
is she
career.
single? Is she married? Does she have
She's,
kids?
in the first novel, she's single. Second novel, she's recently married and a young mother with her first child, who's a toddler. And the third novel, she has 2 children who are elementary school age, and the fourth novel, which just came out, her kids are teenagers.
Wow.
And actually, in the fourth novel, she's the fictional district attorney of Westchester County. So
Oh,
I'm
wow.
bringing her up the career path as well. And
There you
the
go.
fifth novel, I think I'm going to make her a
Does this
judge.
model your own life at all?
In a way, certainly I was an assistant district attorney. I didn't handle as many top-level cases that Dana handled, so in
Yeah.
that way she's fictional, and I can go off in my imagination of what that might have
Yeah.
been like. I did a little bit more appellate work than I did trial work when I was an assistant DA.
Oh, wow.
But as I said, the first novel really took off on the Colombian narcotics cartel investigation,
Yeah, that's-
and I
No,
have
you have
her
to
a
do a lot.
rookie in that book. So she faces kind of some conflicts in that book with respect to learning something about some friends who may be involved in the crime. So
Wow.
that's an example of one of the kind of ethical conflicts that I like to
Yeah.
throw at Dana in my novels and have her in the middle of a dilemma where she has to make a choice between either family and friends or her career.
Talk
and
to
her
me
bosses.
about research. Must be awful tricky.
Well, that's interesting because with so many years being a lawyer, I actually have a lot of it in my head.
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen thousands and thousands of cases. In my later career, as I said, I worked for the appellate division, and I worked on all kinds of case law and read. I was a supervisor toward the end of that part of my career, which I recently retired from in September. And I was responsible for reading every single decision on
Oh,
the
my
court,
goodness.
and my job was kind of, I guess you would describe it as being kind of the editor-in-chief of the court. So I had to know
Holy.
the substantive law as well as
Yeah,
the
everything was
nitty-gritty.
right there, man. All
Yeah.
the wonderful material.
So it's so much of it is floating
Yeah.
around in my mind.
Yeah.
I can pick out a case, and then if I need to research it further, I will just, I'll get the idea from my work, and then I'll fine tune it with maybe going,
Yeah.
doing some more research to make sure that I've got I'm
Yeah.
remembering my law correctly. And
Yeah. I talk to writers all the time who say to me, my head is so filled with so much wonderful information. I should write a book. And I say, yes, you should.
Exactly,
And
yes,
I'm
it's all there.
very pleased that you realized that all of this information would go to waste if you didn't put it to good use. And my goodness, yeah, you put it to good use. It's wonderful to put all of these things together. And you have
it's-
the unique opportunity of being on both sides. You really are kind of an unbiased viewer of all of this information. So you could actually see, and you're hearing all of these things that go on both sides. It's like
Well, now,
being
when
on
you-
both sides of every kiss.
When
It's wonderful.
when you work in the court system, especially so when the early part of my career, I was on one side of the courtroom as the prosecutor. In my
Yeah.
later part of my career, I was in the court system, and you do see every side of a case when you're in
Yeah.
the court system.
Which is
so
wonderful.
I like to incorporate a lot of that in my books too, because I
Yeah.
do see things from a lot of different points of view, and I incorporate those points of view in the book. If you have a criminal case, you have the point of view of the victims, you have the point of view of the prosecutor, the point of view of the judge, the defense attorney, the defendant, the family members of the defendants and the victims.
So-
and all of that comes into play in the criminal justice system, which is just really
Yeah.
the most fascinating dramatic arena,
Oh, I can
think,
imagine.
to
I mean, you are right
be in.
there with all the richest material is right at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a real big question for you, because many of our audience, they're writers. And I know that one of the things they want to know is, Via, how do you do a career like yours and have the time to write 8 books this thick? What do? You stay up nights? What do you sleep 1 hour or what?
Well, that's funny, because when I was working, I slept very little.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little bit more sleep now, so that's one
Yeah.
benefit of
I
retiring.
work through the night. That's what I
So-
do. I work like 1 o'clock to like about 5 o'clock. great time. Nobody's around.
It is nice
and
and quiet. Yes, yeah. I've done that. You know, I tend to like mix it up, but yeah, when I was working full time, it was those moments that you would catch, and sometimes when you do more, you do more. I don't know how that works, but it did for me. And you catch those couple hours late at night or in the morning or on the weekend, and you get more productive.
Yeah,
So,
I'm one of those people who say the same thing. Since I retired, I have less time to get things done.
Yeah, I don't know, how does that work?
How did I ever do all I'm doing and work full time? I have no idea how I possibly got all that done.
You get very efficient.
Yeah,
right?
That's what you do.
Everything
And
is by the minute.
Take advantage of all of the time in a day. 24 hours become very valuable because you have to fit as much of it in there, including sleep. Really do need sleep.
Yes, I'm glad I'm getting a little bit more of that now.
So tell me a little bit more about your writing style. You write at the kitchen table? Do you write in the library? Do you write in the basement? Do you have a little office space?
I now have a little office space, which is one of my daughter's former bedrooms.
Yep, me too.
I have I have 2 adult daughters. They're wonderful. That's been a wonderful part of my life. But yes, they're not in the home anymore. So I do have an office.
Yep.
But I also tend to just pick up my laptop and just walk all around the house with it. Sometimes I feel like I need just like another part of the house. You know, I'll go down to the kitchen table or go down to the sunroom and put my laptop on my lap. Sometimes I go outside if it's nice weather. But yeah, it's kind of when the inspiration hits me.
I hear you. I mean, sometimes I write at the kitchen table. Sometimes I write outside on the patio. Sometimes, most of the time, I write in my little office, which was a former bedroom, and middle of the night. This way I can get things out the way I need to get them out. When I'm writing, I write in the middle of the night. But between books, I don't write at all. You know, and I just...
What I do between novels, I tend to go back to short stories. I'll take a little break from a novel. They're very different kinds of things to write. Yeah. Obviously, a short story takes less time. You feel very satisfied and accomplished when you get that piece of writing done. It feels very nice. A novel is just a long, sustained road. I do start out with an outline, a general outline. I have an idea of where I'm going, but you know, it morphs along the way. Yes. I'm constantly going back and editing because I'll see, I went this way, that's not quite working, that won't work for Dana in the courtroom, I have to change this a little bit.
2 general rules I tell young writers. I say, look, know where you're going. You don't necessarily have to go there, but know where you're going so that you have a direction. Feel free to change it as it goes on because the characters will tell you what to do. If you really get into it, you'll find that the characters are the ones writing the book.
Exactly. That's the fun part of it, isn't it?
It is the fun part of it.
I just love it. And now that I've written 4 novels with Dana Hargrove, she is just part of my life. Her husband, her children, her friends, her colleagues, her adversaries. I kind of live with them now. Yeah. And they do, when you get really immersed in the world that you're creating, they will direct you the way that you want to go.
People say to me, why do you write? I say, because I want to know how the story ends, man. I sit sometimes and I'm like amazed. I had no idea it was going there. You know, I mean, I tell the story about the time when, you know, I did a character in the book who grew up with his dog Shadow, and he gets into trouble later on at school. He's drinking, and he's in trouble. And he comes home, and his mother's on the porch crying. And he said, Mom, it's not that bad. She said, Shadow died. Oh. He's on the bed. And I'm sitting there, tears are going down my eyes because he's hugging this dog.
Oh, you're making me sad.
I know, for the last time, he's hugging this dog that he grew up with. We watched him grow up with this dog all the way through. I had no idea it was going to happen. It happened, and it was like, broke my heart. I had to take a break.
Oh, boy.
So it does happen, and that's what I love about writing. The mystery of not knowing what's going to happen for sure. It's as you say, you can have an outline, but Whether you're going to follow that outline precisely or not depends on your character.
Right.
Your character will
Depends
tell
on
you
the
where it's
character,
gonna go.
and as far
Yeah.
as there's character and then there's plot. Now, if you have, if you're going along and following your outline and realizing that a part of the plot becomes inconsistent with something earlier on,
Yeah.
then you just
Right.
have to be flexible
Yeah. And
and
you
change
have
it.
to be flexible. You have to be able to go back. I remember when I did Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, when I originally wrote the book, I realized that I needed background for what I was writing. So I had to go back and write chapter 1 and 2.
Sometimes
the
it's better to start in the middle or the end and go back. Yes.
Yeah, and just let it go. And other times I had to go back and pull something out because now it no longer had relevance to the plot. I tell writers, be conscious of your rising action. Make sure that the series of incidents rise to your climax and they are consistent with your resolution. So when you go back, it's very difficult for some writers to say, I'm going to take this out. And they say, no, that's my scene. I wrote it.
Right. You can't be so attached
You
to something
can't.
that you've
I
written.
say,
Yes.
tell me what it has to do with your rising action and your climax. Well, it just adds to the character. No, you need it to add to your plot. Your characters, important, make them three-dimensional, but you need to tie them together. 5 tools every single writer has: plot, character, setting, theme, and tone. And you have to revisit those all the way through your book to make sure that all 5 of those things work.
Right.
And that not one is overburdened over the other. And they have to.
And part of that in
intertwine.
character is point of view. You've got to remember
Yes.
what point of view you're writing from. In a novel-length work, you can change points of view and then try and be very consistent with the point of view in that particular chapter. Are you speaking from Dana Hargrove's point of view, or from her husband's point of view, or from the judge's point of view, whatever it might be?
Yeah.
And that makes it interesting too, but
Oh,
you have to be
yeah.
very clear on that.
Yeah. Do you change points of view in chapters? Like have a chapter in the judge's point of view?
Sometimes it's by chapter. Sometimes it's within the same chapter.
Wow.
I'll do sections. I'll do a little break, a scene break, and maybe the same thing that has just happened in the courtroom from Dana's point of view. Then we'll have another
Yeah.
person's point of view as to what just happened, and it's very different. I found that very interesting in being a lawyer too, and what I learned in trial work is that what is reality? So much of what happens really is different points of view.
Yeah.
You'll have witnesses in the same criminal case
Right.
seeing the same event, describing
And
it
they see
180
it differently.
degrees
And
differently.
how the jury
Yes.
sees it, and how the judge sees it, how the defense sees it. It's very different. And that's what makes it intriguing in order to be able to.
It does. It makes it very difficult as
Yeah.
an attorney trying a case, though, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because,
But Dan was talking about that too when Dan was on, where he said when he reads cases, he has to be open-minded and realize that people have different points of view and they see things differently. 3 people can see an accident, and one's over here, one's over here, and one's over there. They see 3 different accidents.
They see it, they all come at it with a different background, a different personality, a different point of view, different conditions.
Yeah.
But
So-
that's what's fun with fiction, because you can play with
Yeah,
that.
you can.
And then you can create the sense of suspense and mystery, because what really did happen? This person saw this person heard that.
This is going to seem like a strange question, but do your books get in your way sometimes? Like you're writing this book, but the other book comes to mind, and the book you want to write is coming to mind. How do you focus on the book you're on?
Well, I don't really have too much of that problem. When I'm working
Because you
on
get into
one
your
book,
characters' heads.
But interestingly, though, of course, since it is the same character throughout
Yeah.
these novels, I remember things that happened to her 6 years ago and then I do incorporate it into the current work
Yeah, that's wonderful.
in a
That's
kind of
'cause you
subtle
know your
way,
character.
but not in a way that a reader will be put off if they want to pick up just one of them, because they are
Yeah.
all standalone.
Yeah.
You don't have to read all of them to read one of them.
Oh, that's good. That's
But
good.
I will bring in parts of her personality,
Yeah.
things that happened to her in the past.
Because
work it in.
she's real people now. You know, that's what I tell some of
Exactly.
the writers. You're not creating characters. You're creating people.
And that's the other interesting thing that sometimes people ask me, am I Dana Hargrove? Is this really an autobiography?
really.
By no means, no.
Okay.
This is the great thing about fiction writing, is that you take these little bits and pieces of your life,
There you go.
and somehow they just all get mixed up and they turn out something completely different.
My infamous
Yeah.
quote to a kid who said, Mr. Dacquino, how do I write an exciting book if my life is boring? And I said,
Go
listen
off
to
in
me.
your imagination.
Don't write about what is. Write about what if. Take what really happened and fly with it, man. It didn't have to really happen. Just go with it. Now, speaking of flying, time has been flying as
Time
we've been
is
talking. We're in about the last 2 minutes. Via,
I was hoping I could make one short announcement. in our
wonderful.
last-
Please do that.
Because I am a board member of the Mystery Writers of America New York chapter.
Wow.
And part of my responsibilities involve administering a scholarship, the Leon B. Burstein Scholarship for Aspiring Mystery Writers. So
Wow.
I hope that they
Administrative
could-
scholarship for aspiring mystery writers.
If
An opportunity.
anyone in the audience is interested, go on to the mwany.org website. And the
NWA
information is
dot Y
mwany.org.
.org, and you can apply for this scholarship. And wonderful, so aspiring writers. Here's your opportunity. Break in, man. All right, Via. What a pleasure having you here. You are
Thank
a
you.
treat. You are a prolific, wonderful writer. You have some real solid background. I want to thank you all for turning in today. Read Via's books. You'll love them. Go to the library and spend a month there reading her books. Via, thank you so much.
Thank you, Vin. It's been
Thank
a
you.
real pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in. I will try to read as much of your books as possible because you are indeed a fascinating person.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right now, I believe.